Talking About Science Films. I'm Jimmy P, filmmaker and sexual astronaut. First up, guys, please check out our fourth feature film for free over on YouTube. Just search for Little Monster or click on the link in the show notes below. This episode, I'm joined by a very special guest, Mr. Terry Cooper, director of Off-World, and soon to be the director of his second feature film, Bloody Students. Terry, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, and thank you for having me. Yeah, I've seen a couple of your podcasts, and I've seen Little Monster, which I thought was fantastic. And so I feel I'm in a nice, safe space here, you know, like minds, etc.
Yes, yeah, I think we can always say we're a safe space for low budget indie filmmakers. Outside of that, who knows? But I was first kind of made aware of Off-World way back when via I think it was the joys of Instagram. And Jim, my producing partner, we were like in pre-production on our fourth feature, and on Instagram we saw these photos of these maniacs building a spaceship bridge in their garage, and that was an instant follow. And as it happens, because this of course is South Wales and everybody knows everybody else, we ended up working with a lot of the cast who was also cast members on Off-World itself. So am I right in thinking Off-World was your first film?
It was. The plan was to sit down, get a bunch of cosplayers together and make a 10-minute short. So we thought, it'd be nice if we could raise some money for this. So we did a Kickstarter for £2,000 and it raised 10,000. I'm like, okay, then while I'm writing it, let's just write 90 minutes worth of script and see how much we can film. And if we can shoot it all, great. If we can't shoot it all, just do the 10-minute, stick it on YouTube. And that's a showcase for anyone who worked on it to say, hey, look, we made a movie. And, again, this is ancient history for me. This is like 7 years ago this week we shot it, and we put a really basic trailer up on YouTube, which is still there, a good couple of years ago, and it got picked up by an American distributor. And last week we signed their contract and we sent everything to the States. So the production is finally over after 7 years of post-production hell.
Fantastic. Congratulations. So how was Off-World the 10-minute short, apart from being obviously a lot shorter from the feature? What was the original concept behind the 10-minute short then?
Well, weirdly enough, I was digging through old chats recently, because when we were submitting everything to the American distributor, you've got to send them every image, every file, every release form, basically every element of the film in front of and behind the screen, as much as you can find, and get it over to them so they've got massive amounts of flexibility with what they want to do with it. And I came across it wasn't even a Word doc, it was a TXT file that said Colony brackets working title, and it had like 5 little bullet points about what we wanted this short film to be. Now, obviously, with some films, you write the story and then you work out how can we make this with, locations and people available. But we did it the other way around. We went, what have we got? Who can we get? And what can we write around that? And my brain goes to sci-fi anyway, always goes to sci-fi. So we were like, well, we can get people and we can shoot outdoors. So unless you do another Star Wars fan film where everyone's a Jedi in the forest, because there's quite a lot of them, I said, let's do something like Pitch Black, where they're stuck outdoors, or The Walking Dead, where it's like survival. One of my favorite films is Alive from, was it 92, 93 or something like that?
I think 92, yeah.
Watched that recently, actually. Do you know who the lead guy is, apart from Ethan Hawke? The lead guy was the oldish, not the oldest chap. He was in the last series of The Walking Dead. There's the Commonwealth that they were in, that sort of community. He's the guy who leads that.
Oh, wow.
He was like the Doctor in Alive. Still an amazing film, an amazing true story. And I was like, well, let's do a sci-fi version of we've got to walk 300 miles to get to safety or whatever. And we just started cobbling that together. I looked in my bullet points and it said that halfway through the film, they realized they're being watched by an indigenous alien. And they sort of capture him. He doesn't speak any English, but he ends up befriending them and teaching them don't eat that, but you can eat that, and don't drink the water there, and all this kind of stuff. And then this sort of mistrust builds up, and then at some point, I think he gets killed. But we did away with that pretty soon, because unless it was going to be a guy in a rubber mask, or we couldn't afford prosthetics, so we went, let's just stick to the human story, which is cheaper.
So what was the idea behind actually doing a film? Had you done any shorts before this, or what was the passion?
Yeah, well, I've done lots of extra work, and back in the 90s, I was working in a stop motion animation studio as an artist and making, 1/6 scale animation puppets of creatures, monsters, that kind of stuff. And when it came up to 2015, I got a message from Chris Bevan, who became our first AD and co-producer. And he was making a short for college called 10%. And it's basically a very condensed Guy Ritchie gangster flick. And his lead actor had dropped out. So he said, could you step in as lead actor? So it was myself and Gavin Rand, who ended up in Offworld as well. And we spent like 3 or 4 days fake bloodied up with vests on, tied to a chair, getting beaten up. So I was doing my best Jason Statham voice like that, basically. And Dave Wong, who's also a Bridgend-based actor.
I've had the pleasure of working with Dave as well. Yeah,
he's brilliant, and he ended up in things like he had bit parts in, was it not Sky, one of the Pierce Brosnan Bond films, I think it was.
Oh, okay.
And,
I know.
Oh, he ended up on bus stop posters for the recent
Fantastic Beasts.
Fantastic Beasts too.
Yeah.
He was this Asian wizard type guy, so it's like, I know that guy. Awesome. So Dave Wong was the Mr. Big, and he came up to me with a stand life and said, "Do you know who I am, Mr. Goodman?" And I said, "I don't know. Are you here to deliver my Chinese?" And then he beat me up a few times, and that was it. Then it was a college film, and it looked really cinematic. I think it's still on YouTube somewhere. We also met Chris McFall there, who was DOP, and we got him in to do Offworld as well on the strength of that. And it was really good fun. And, I think it may have been that and a combination of working on as an extra on other things for BBC and, like proper film and telly. And it was like, I've got to do something one day. I've got to do something. I'm no spring chicken. I've got to get started on this. So, like I always say, making my first feature film in my late 40s is a little bit late in the game, but look, if you got the idea and you got the drive for it, just do it. I say that to everyone, just why not?
Yeah. And you didn't make it easy for yourself. So you're doing an ambitious sci-fi film.
Sorry. No.
Where did the sci-fi, was that like because you're a passionate genre fan?
It's me. I'm because I'm of a certain age. I've got a DVD rack here full of mid-80s stuff. Escape from New York, Evil Dead, The Thing. Lots of John Carpenter, obviously, all that kind of stuff. And I will always go to sci-fi anyway. I honestly, I don't want to disparage anyone who wants to do kitchen sink dramas, slice of life, some of the more serious, issues and that kind of stuff. But it's not the kind of films that I watch anyway. I want to go to the cinema to escape the drudgery of my life and, literally just be taken away, and, anything's possible. So obviously Star Wars, like a lot of us, was the thing that made us go, that's what cinema can do. So, I was always going to do sci-fi, and with sci-fi, it's very flexible as far as ideas. If we wanted to do a superhero movie, you're kind of like, right, we're going to put people in spandex costumes, and how do we get them to fly and lift cars? But with sci-fi, it's like, the way I always describe Offworld is 10 people arguing in a field, because although it's you've made this sci-fi movie, it's like, well, it's still just 10 people walking and bickering with each other.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, very similar to what Ridley Scott said about, you know, the first Alien. It's a haunted house movie in space. So yeah, great.
Exactly,
No,
exactly.
fantastic, fantastic. So, in terms of then expanding out it from this 10-minute idea into a feature-length script, I understand you had a co-writer with this, and how did that relationship work? And you know, how did you co-write a script together then?
Yeah, well, I came up with like all the plot points and stuff, along with Adam, who was our co-producer at the time. And one of the most amazing writers I know is Chris Lynch, who I was working kind of co-working with on some little graphic novel stuff he was doing at the time. But also he started writing for Candy Jar Publishing, the book publishers in Cardiff. And I do a lot of illustration for them, and I put my first 3 books out with them as well. And every time I've read anything of Chris Lynch's, I'm just blown away. He's proper like bestseller quality with everything he does, and he's super meticulous. So when I send him my scrawls, he goes, right, well, that doesn't work because of that, and that needs fixing because of that, and you need to explain that better. And he just basically ties up all the loose ends for me, sends it back, and I go, oh yeah, that was a right, fish net with loads of holes in it that you've fixed, but it isn't arty enough. And I go and undo some of the holes again, and I send it back to him, and he ties them back up again, and we just bounced it back and forth like that. So you know, as soon as I can get a chance to work with him in future, I will, because like he's my messiah when it comes to writing. He's just the man,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. It's really helpful to have guys like that you can kind of. I suppose in another version of the language is almost like a script doctor, isn't it? Really, just kind
Oh
of.
yeah, yeah. You get too close to your own script, and you can't see the wood for the trees. And even not before Christmas, I did a kind of live YouTube video where I was reading my own script to about 6 people, and even then, I saw it with new eyes, and people were going, "Yeah, but earlier on this happened, but wouldn't they be like?" And you go, "Oh yeah," because you need someone to bounce off, basically, or some kind of feedback.
So with Offworld, then, how many iterations or how many drafts of the script did it, get to until you got to the shooting script itself?
As far as I can remember, we gave it a new draft number every time I sent it to Chris. So it was like I'd write draft 1, send it to him. It comes back to me as draft 2. Then I send it to him, and it comes back to me. That's draft 3. I think we got to 6 or 7. It wasn't major changes, but any changes were made were on Chris's side, clarity and making sure everything kind of makes sense. And on my side, it was more on the kind of making sure dialogue is realistic and not too over the top, and stripping out anything that may be too expensive to shoot, like the alien idea and things like that. And even when we got to the shooting script, when we were shooting, we started getting like a marker and going, we don't need this line, we don't need that. So we were editing even while we were shooting, because I found that the way Chris likes to work with his accuracy, he occasionally has characters repeat things more than once. Now, I totally know where he's going from with that, because there's this rule in advertising that says you've got to tell somebody 3 times before they act upon it. The first time they kind of hear it and it goes over their head. The second time they kind of go, oh, that reminds me of the first time. And the third time they go, now I get it, I'll do something about it. And he's kind of right. But when the actors would go in a scene, so we've got 300 miles. 300 miles? That's a long way to go. Yes, we're going to have to do that 300 miles. You go, hang on, there's a bit of repetition here. So we started, scribbling out some of those. But generally, I did a comparison the other day. I've got a copy of the script from Offworld from when we were shooting it, which is marked up like crazy and folded and moth-eaten and everything. And I've got a new copy, which is the on-screen dialogue, which we had to submit for subtitles.
Yeah.
And they're almost 2 different movies. I mean, the same events, but the dialogue is completely changed, because some actors like to drop in their version of the line, or, I did it myself. Your brain goes blank. You know what you got to say, but you don't know the exact wording. So you say something similar. And, the 2 things, it's really interesting to see how it evolves from the original writer's script to what is ends up on screen, you know.
Yeah, I know, you know, from experience, if you've got great actors, sometimes a line of dialogue doesn't even need to be said. It can be conveyed through a
I
reaction,
know.
you know, emotion.
Yeah, as a writer, you know, you think, oh, my characters are blank, empty shells. I've got to give them all their emotion and everything. But actors, you know, worth their salt will go, well, I can do this with a look, you know. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
learned all this in Offworld. Like I've always said, Offworld, to me at least, was 50% utter bliss and 50%, I won't say it, torture.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good ratio. That's a pretty good ratio.
Yeah, I mean, if you add on top of that 7 years of post-production hell, maybe it was like 60-40
Sure.
torture. But yeah, a lot of people have said to me, how can you say it was painful at all? You got to make a sci-fi film. It's like, you have no idea the battles that went on before, during, and after shooting.
Yeah, people who
And
say that have never made a film. So yeah,
absolutely. And it's everything from money, personal relationships, you know, stress, time. I mean, to this day, I've not received a penny from Offworld. We paid all the crew, all the editors, sci-fi effects people, catering, petrol expenses, and if any money at all comes back from, you know, if it sells in the States, the first people who get paid are the actors. Now I am an actor, yay, win-win. No, but we're paying all the actors who work for free, and only then, once they've got their I don't know what the percentage is going to be, but once they get their money, if there's anything left, then the producers get it. So, you know, I did it for the love of it, and I do and have had anonymous people jumping up online and accusing me of being some con man who took £10,000 from Kickstarter and ran away with it. And I'm like, I wouldn't be tearing my hair out 7 years later to make a film, to finish a film, if I was some kind of con man. You wouldn't see me. I'd be gone by now.
yeah,
But I'm not in
yeah.
it for that. I'm in it to make a sci-fi movie because it's something I've always wanted to do, you know.
I think a lot of people just don't understand the core ethics or ethos behind crowdfunding, and the important part of that is the crowd part.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, like yeah, the and not a lot of them read the terms and conditions, and you know,
No,
the
no,
extra
because
FAQ that you can add in, which basically explains, look, you know, we're doing this for the love of it. And yeah,
yeah.
as you say, you know, yeah, it would have been the easiest thing would have been for you just to drop off the face of the earth, radio silence.
How many Kickstarter I mean, when Kickstarter first started, there was a Space Marine film project called Legionnaires that millions of people around the country put money into it. It made like £1 million, and it fizzled out and never got made. I put money, I think I put like a tenner in back in the day. But some people put in like, you know, 50 grand or whatever, and it disappeared. And it's almost like an urban legend now. Oh, I remember the Legionnaires film that never got made. And, you know, countless films don't get made. And because of that, the terms and conditions of every crowdfunding site, not just Kickstarter, we're talking Indiegogo, Crowdfunder Co. UK, all these others, it says you're not paying to guarantee this film get made. It's like the film could still not get made, but you still don't get your money back.
Yeah.
You donate at your own risk. And I did a thing recently on Instagram. It was one of these anonymous question, ask me anything things. And again, one of my fan club popped up and said, do you feel bad raising money for a second film when you took money off the first one and no one's seen it? And they kept coming back with questions like that, saying, you know, I want my money back. Well, the person who was being a hater, I can pretty much guarantee they didn't put a penny into the film anyway. They just have some sort of personal axe to grind. Wow. Yeah. But they're so brave you wouldn't identify themselves. But other people would say, well, you know, you're working on your second film, but we haven't seen the first one. And I'm like, it does exist, I promise you. And we're trying to get the film to people who have backed Offworld to begin with. But we can't just put a link and stick it online now, because we have a distributor, and that completely invalidates the agreement because they can't sell it if it's freely available.
I mean, so, and rolling it back, really, I mean, they don't understand how the film industry works anyway. You know, it's not like Spielberg doesn't take on another project until, you know, it's out, you know, Schindler's List is out in cinemas, and then, yeah.
I should have started Bloody Students 4 or 5 years ago.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
started it a year ago, so I'm glad I'm ahead. I'm on my fourth draft already.
Yeah. Great.
So
Yeah.
at least I've got some sort of traction now, and we're kind of getting into fundraising and pre-production. So,
Yeah. Great.
again,
Which moves me perfectly onto my next question, Terry. So, in terms of Offworld, then, so which came first? Was it the funding or the budget? Did you kind of sit down and go, right, this is going to cost this much, therefore we're going to crowdfund, or did you kind of think, right, let's see what the interest is, and then budget to whatever we raise?
well, I think it was a case of like I say, we worked out where we could film and who we could use, and we thought, well, that's going to be reasonably cheap. And the actors from the start said, we're doing this as a showcase piece. We're not expecting to get paid. So we thought if we can raise like $2,000 for catering and people's traveling expenses, one or two people came from out of Wales, so we like put them up in a B&B. I thought, well, we'll do that. But as soon as we got to the end of the crowdfunding month and we got £10,000, Kickstarter took their grand or whatever it was out of it. So we ended up with about 9.5. Then I started putting my savings in to make the aforementioned spaceship set and stuff. But we had the script, and then we basically said, well, we've only got this amount of money. So we started approaching people and saying, could you shoot it for this? Could you edit it for this? Because that's all we've got, rather than going, could you edit our film? How much will that cost? And they'll go, $4,000. I go, we can't afford that. So we basically said, we've got like $2,000. Could you shoot the film for us, for that? And, people would find ways to sort of make it work. It's got to be quicker, and we got to do less of this and more of that. And, any way to cut corners and cut costs, basically. So that's kind of how we squeezed a film out of that really tiny budget,
Yeah. And where did you find the majority of the budget was allocated to in the end?
I think the biggest one-stop area that most of the money went into was the camera crew, because we had a DOP, a second camera. So both of those guys got paid. In fact, our DOP bought whole new kit with his fee anyway. He bought himself the camera he really wanted. So we had two identical DSLRs, whatever, shooting. And then obviously sound. And we put quite a bit of money into the effects, because we had some college students, but we also had a couple of professional guys. We sent shots up to them and said, can you paint out that pylon in the background? And can you put some mountains in and a planet in the sky? And all the kind of make it look a bit more like, an outer space planet rather than a, country park type thing. So yeah, I think it was basically camera and sound, really.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, that's great, and that's kind of where things end up on screen. You want the money to end up on screen, really. Often when you're making films, and it can be kitchen sink or it can be whatever. It's sometimes the logistics of getting people from A to B, and the money away, in the simple things there. And obviously, I understand you guys, in terms of the principal photography, was only 7 days. Is that right?
Yeah, the main shoot, all the outdoor stuff, 6 days. We did them from Monday to Saturday, 6 a.m. start, when it was freezing cold. It was April 26, 2017. Freezing cold in the mornings. We all sitting there with we've got photos of everyone wrapped up in blankets, hugging each other. And then when it got to about 1 p.m. in the afternoon, the sun was ridiculously hot. I was burnt to a crisp. We all were, but we were so cold earlier that you don't feel the sun burning you.
Yeah.
So we filmed as chronologically as possible in this terms of the story. So by the end of it, my goodness me, my hair is about as long as it is in the film, but it's up there because it's been washed every day, and it's like, I was like, can we fix that in post? Because I've got this, I look like some kind of mountain man. I've got a sunburn. I've literally got, the crow's feet you get in a cartoon when someone like dynamite goes off in their face, and they're all black, and then they've got these. I had all that from sunburn, from squinting out in the sun, and I was peeling and everything. And we all looked a bit knackered and a bit sort of weather beaten by the end of the film, which kind of works,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, makes sense in terms of the context. You mentioned it earlier in terms of the crowdfunding. an absolute success, it sounds like. So the original target was 2,000, is that right?
£2,000, yeah.
And how many days was the campaign over?
30 days.
Just 30 days, and
Yeah.
you at the end of the day you raised
£10,054.
fantastic. I mean, and this was back in 2016, is that right?
2016, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. So was this your first experience of crowdfunding?
It was, yeah. So I looking back at it now, the only reason we did as well as we did was because of the enthusiasm of the cast, because they were super buzzed to be in the film. You know, they weren't doing it to like, oh, we get a payday out of this. It was more like, we get to be in a movie. A lot of them hadn't done much for a while. Some of them have acted, you know, Amy and Danny have acted in films, but other people, it was their first film and they wanted to get into it. So they just went crazy on the social medias, like sharing the link out. And with every Kickstarter, when you launch it, you get a big influx of money to begin with. You know, maybe it's like $1,000, and then it goes down throughout the month, and it's like, oh, nothing that day, and all of a sudden it starts to raise up, and right near the end it ramps up because people go, oh, it's I better throw my $5 or my $10 in at the end. So yeah, I think that's I mean, looking back, when it comes to things like rewards of t-shirts and prints, and we had patches and all sorts of things like that, I think we didn't plan that well enough, because we spent a fortune on posting stuff out. Right. We had 255 backers, most of them in the UK, but we did have some in Europe. We had one in Japan and one in Australia, and like 4 or 5 in the States. So, you know, just trying to wrap unwieldy sized things and packets of things in boxes that wouldn't fit through letterboxes, and you go down the post office and they go, yeah, that's £1 million in postage, please. And you go, oh, right, okay. Yeah. So I need to try and plan that a bit better in future.
Yeah, and in terms of kind of supplementary material to kind of keep the excitement building and everything, did you prepare quite a lot of material, and what sort of material did you prepare for it?
We didn't actually. I don't think we made a lot of stuff, but we did our best to appear at a number of conventions. Right. The furthest we got was probably Bristol, places like that. But we did a couple in Newport, a couple in Cardiff, and we had a table where we'd put like a banner on the front. We'd have some of the cast members would be there in their uniforms with their 3D printed guns, and we'd raffle stuff. The one thing we used to do was the rifle raffle, where I'd basically get a Nerf rifle, paint it up, you know, Star Wars style, all black, loads of scratches and weathering, and just raffle it for £1 a ticket. And we were raising like 200 quid per event, you know, just to put into the kitty. So that was all helping. But yeah, I mean, we had like interviews, and we had we made a promotional video, sort of in universe, because in the film, the company that's running the colonization mission is called PGCI, which is Pan Global Colonization Initiative. So we've done this sort of fake RoboCop feel, kind of, the Earth is dying, but luckily PGCI has stepped in to find a new planet where you can live in luxury. Join us. And it was all that, and it was out in a field with a rake, and then a guy would come up to me with a letter, and he'd be the postman. We look at the camera and go, you know, and it was all like really sort of tongue-in-cheek, Paul Verhoeven, the future is a better place with PGCI, that kind of thing. So that's, you know, it was minimal stuff, but I'm hoping to do more of that kind of thing in the run up to the next one.
I think that's kind of key, and it sounds like, yeah, you kind of augmented it with in-person appearances,
That's it, yeah,
various cons and everything like that. But I know, going back to campaigns where whether it takes off or it doesn't take off, the number of times you kind of you donate your money and then you don't hear anything for the rest of the 30 days, and yeah, I think it's really important to kind of maintain and build the excitement through the project.
Oh yeah, and I think when that 30 days is going along, it's like you say, it's important to keep everyone updated. So Kickstarter does this update thing where you can just type in updates and it emails all the backers. Yeah. And to date I've done 103 updates over the last 7 years. Even in the years when nothing was happening, like lockdowns and stuff, are going, guys, we haven't given up. We don't forget about us. Don't think it's not coming up, because we're going to drag this over the finish line, kicking and screaming. But also, it's important not to just get the filmmaker to update the backers. It's also important to get the cast and the crew to show their support as well, because what happens if it's only coming from one person, people might get the impression that, well, no one else is supporting this film. It's only the guy who's trying to make it. And
Yeah.
you've got to prove that you do have a team behind you, even if it's just,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, handful of actors, or, you know, some of the people who are going to be working on music or effects or whatever.
Definitely. I mean, you know, it's a group of cheerleaders. If there's just one 40-year-old cheerleader on there,
Yeah,
that's
you're like, this is a bit sad. You know, it's like, where's your posse?
yeah.
Where's all the other people closest to you who should be supporting this film?
And I mean, I would count that as like additional material, you know. Yeah, getting your cast and crew to write pieces to the backers and all of this, saying, you know, about their character, or the crew saying what their job is. I think that's key. And I think, you know, the kind of people who are you know, backing films, especially, you know, indie films of a genre thing, tend to be either, you know, full-on sci-fi fans, or, you know, interested in filmmaking. So I think those kind of
That's right.
are,
Yeah.
you know, are gold dust really for your
And to be honest, the second group of people you mentioned, the people who are generally interested in filmmaking, I think they're I don't want to say better, but I'm saying they're the more preferable bunch of people, because they understand to a certain extent how much goes into a film. Sci-fi people know what they like. You know, everyone likes a different type of sci-fi, whether it's fantasy or whether it's like hard sci-fi, dystopian sci-fi. There's so many different flavors. But if you've got people who are generally interested in film, they'll be happy to hear about the story and the creative side, but they're also happier to hear about, well, how are you going to do effects? How are you going to make a spaceship? How are you going to be in a spaceship? How are you going to crash the spaceship? So while those things I mentioned were like sci-fi conceits, it's still interesting to a general film fan.
Yeah.
You know, even if we said we were crashing a car, they're like, well, how are you going to crash a car? Let's see how you do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you got to try and satisfy sci-fi fans and satisfy the film fans.
And I think, yeah, I mean, obviously you were saying, you know, during the dry periods when, you know, yeah, we were all stuck in lockdown and everything, what was great for Offworld the project was you had these comparisons of, this is what it looked like when we shot it, and this is what it looks like with all the VFX layered on top and everything like that. So still maintaining, you know, some form of interest with your backers, and being able to say, look, this is, you know, it's still happening, and this is, you know, your filmmaking nugget for the week, the month, whatever, you know, the releases you were doing.
Yeah, I mean, 7 years is a long time. And we did really well in the updates that we did, and like you say, the comparisons and showing people the little bit of progress that was being made every time without giving too much away. It really worked, and I think we did well in terms of, we didn't get very many people throwing, you know, their toys out the pram and going, I've had enough of this, I give up on you guys, you're a bunch, you know, I wanted this film 2 years ago. There were like one or two people who said, oh, this film's never getting made, I want my money back. And that was like literally one or two people out of everyone who's seen the film, and 250 odd backers. And, you know, I was as nice as possible. I said, look, firstly, that's not how crowdfunding works. Secondly, you don't own the film if you've crowdfunded it. I mean, I've put money into lots of people's films. Anytime I see a project on Kickstarter, and I'll put in 10 or 20 quid, whatever. And I don't claim to own part of that film. You know, it's because you want to help someone create something that you think will be better made than not made. So, you know, and then there was one or two of my, you know, my sort of ongoing anonymous hater posse who will come up and say, you're a con man, you've just taken all his money, we'll never see this film. I'm like, well, look, at the end of the day, you're going to see this film whether you like it or not, because we're not doing this to prove a point to you. We're doing this because we want to make the film.
What would you do differently for the bloody students crowdfunding that you do, you know, from Offworld? So,
well, I'm in the process of setting it up right now. I'm leaving it a little bit late, unfortunately. I know you've got to hit submit and get them to approve everything, but we haven't got long. We've got about 7 days at the time of recording this. So, what I want to do this time is have some better graphics, explaining more clearer. I'm a very wordy person. I think I'm a bit too verbose. This is why my original script was like 200 pages, and now I've like sliced loads out because I overcompensate, like trying to tell people too much, and I go off on tangents, as you probably spotted already. And I think that's adult ADHD, which I've only just realized I've probably had all my life. You over egg the pudding, as it were. So what I would do is make sure that someone who's never heard of me before, no idea about the film, gets it in the first few sentences. Basically clarify as much as possible, distill it down to the most basic ideas that people get it. So when people say, so bloody students, what's that about? And I go, students locked in a museum overnight fighting mummies. And they're like, that's a simplification, but it tells you the three things. And it's like, even that sentence is quite comedic. The title Bloody Students is quite funny because everyone at some point has said bloody students. That instantly tells you it's a comedy. There's blood involved, and there's like mummies and students. So it's like you got to try and distill everything. I've seen people say to me, I've written a sci-fi book, and I'm like, okay. And I go, do you think your publisher would be interested in it? I go, sure. What's the story? Right. Well, there's this guy, and he's 14, and he lives on this planet where, and he goes on for like half an hour, and you know, the whole political federation are attacking, but he's part of a rebellion. And you go, yeah, but what happens? You know, what's it about? You know, it's horrible trying to distill what is, you know, something you love, like you spent months, or in my case a year, writing a new film, and someone says, give me an elevator pitch, you know, just tell me in 3 sentences what the film's about, because you think there's so much nuance, there's so much I want to say, but it's like you've got to get them down to get their interest. This is why newspapers have big headlines. It's like, you know, Prince Charles is king. That's all you need, you know, because you've got to get people in with the first couple of words, and it's not always easy for me to do.
No, it's difficult, and there's so much, you know, media out there that to capture somebody's attention in the quickest way possible is a skill which absolutely every producer, every filmmaker needs to be able to get. No, absolutely.
I tell you what, the one thing, because you've done crowdfunders, haven't you?
We've done we used it as a pre-ordering campaign for Little Monster. So we didn't do it before we shot it, but we did one through Indiegogo.
You know, I'm at the stage now where I've got to do the presentation video, you know, when you go, hi everyone, I'm Terry, and I'm writing a film for this. I'd like you to put your money into it. That's filled me with dread. I like talking to camera. I'm not very good at learning lines. I managed with Offworld. Thanks to Danny, actually. She forced me to sit there and go through scenes without the script in my hand. But other than that, maybe I'll have to get like an auto cue or something, because how to go about it, because I've seen some it's weird. You see some really successful crowdfunding campaigns where the guy is just sitting up against the wall going, hello, I've got this idea for this film and I think it's going to be really good and blah, blah. And he makes a fortune. But you've also got people who do full-on productions. They got costumes, they got things going off, and the best video effects and transitions and all that. And there's no guarantee of what approach will work the best.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to go super flashy with it. I think you just need to have a certain amount of honesty and a certain amount of relatability to who you're talking to. And I think if you can show them that you are determined and passionate about it, I think that will go further than having a flashy, you know, background and all those transitions. But again, this is something I've got to sort of work on in the next few days and get it done really quickly. And I'm crapping myself, basically.
Do you notice much of a difference in terms of the crowdfunding landscape from 2016 to 2023?
Yeah, and it's not good, unfortunately, because of the lockdown and the pandemic and the cost of living thing that we're all going through, not just here, but in the States and everywhere else. The global situation is people are a lot more reluctant to put money into stuff. This does worry me about the upcoming crowdfunding now, because back in 2016, there was none of that. People weren't worried about, the gas and electric and everything going up through the roof, the prices and all that. Now it's a little scarier, a little trickier, and I am worried that we won't make any, or we'll make a tiny amount, but it's going to be all or nothing funding. So basically, I don't want to be able to get raise £200 from people I don't even know, and then keep that money and still not make a film. You know, I just want them to not be charged if we don't hit our goal. So if we don't hit our target and we don't get any money for it, all I'll do is put it back a year, and hopefully that, you know, the current situation will be better in a year's time. I'm not going to you know, put it in mothballs. I'll keep making little bits. I'll keep doing some promotion, keep the social media going. I'll even tweak the script a bit more, whatever. And it may be that some of the cast will be unavailable. They may drop out. They may get too old, that kind of thing. But it's a case of we keep going. We'll just keep going. We'll put it back another year, because my original plan was shoot it this year. Right. I went and got I've got them. Have I got them here? No, I haven't. I had some business cards made up, and on the back of the business card was the pitch about what the film's about and what we plan to do. And every card says it's going to be shot in the South Wales area in 2022. And that's on 500 business cards, most of which I've still got. So I'm getting a Sharpie and I'm grabbing one of the cards and I'm scribbling out the in 2022 bit.
Yeah.
Because
I made that mistake.
Don't put dates on stuff.
No,
don't
do it. We used to when we were in the run up to Little Monster. And again, rookie mistake. We put a date on the end of it. What for? It just means, you know, you instantly just make stuff obsolete. Yeah, I've just remembered
here's a flyer version of it.
Yeah.
And this section in black, there you go.
Yeah.
The South Wales area in 2022. So I'm sharpieing that out on these. So I've got a box full of these, you know, and the cards.
Well, from now on, I just put soon.
Because soon is quicker than it'll happen when it happens. Okay. You know.